years behind bars with 20 years of extended supervision. That was the sentence handed down to Brandon Thompson today. He's the man who brutally attacked and assaulted a UW-Madison student back in the fall of 2023. WMTV's Mackenzie Davis was in the courtroom today and joins us live in the studio tonight with details.
Lee, a sense of closure today for the victim and her family as Brandon Thompson was sentenced for the attack that happened over a year and a half ago in downtown Madison. Thompson says he does not remember sexually assaulting the victim, but his attorney says he's taking full responsibility for his actions.
I think it's very clear what he was doing that night, and he was looking for a victim.
Dane County Assistant District Attorney Matt Moser says what then 26-year-old Brandon Thompson did on that night in September of 2023 was premeditated.
And I think that there's no other explanation for this. I think he's a predator.
Judge Ellen Burrs calling this a, quote, heinous attack as the victim identified as Jane Doe was brutally beaten, strangled, and sexually assaulted and left to die on West Wilson Street.
It was brutal. It was senseless, inexplicable, which means repeatable.
The court heard from Thompson, who apologized to the victim, her family, and friends, saying he was, quote, dealing with his own demons.
What I have done is a horrendous act that has changed the life of a person. That life is now irreparably changed to the point that no apology could ever really fix it.
The victim, who is in the courtroom on Thursday, has made what many are calling a miraculous recovery after suffering a grade 2 traumatic brain injury and a brain bleed. She's still suffering from the loss of her sense of smell.
I think if we didn't already have prisons in Wisconsin, people would be out quarrying stones right now to build one for Mr. Thompson.
The 3 charges Thompson was sentenced for are first-degree sexual assault, great bodily harm, first-degree reckless injury, as well as strangulation and suffocation. Live in the studio tonight, Mackenzie Davis, WMTV 15 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Both the state and defense said there was a high need to protect the public from Thompson, with the state recommending Thompson be sentenced to 86 years in prison.